Hey friends, Kambria Evans here with the Zero Disturbance Podcast. And here on our latest series, Why Women Go to Therapy, we are tackling a big, fat misconception about dopamine. Y'all, we have to set the record straight on language around dopamine today. And here's why. I have a lot of people coming into my office and telling me, something's wrong with me because I'm chasing dopamine. I'm a dopamine addict. I'm a dopamine junkie. And this fascinates me because I don't actually think we're chasing dopamine, okay? So I want to talk today about what I think is actually happening. And I can appreciate that it's easy for people to pick up language from social media and Instagram and all that. Like, that's not wrong or bad. But let me first clarify that dopamine, like many chemicals released in our body, is neither good nor bad. Okay? It just is. It's a hormone, right? It's like oxytocin or adrenaline or whatever. It's like it's a chemical. It's a response our bodies make, right? And the fact that our systems are designed to lean towards a positive feeling that dopamine gives us, or dopamine is released during a positive feeling state, is neither good nor bad. Okay? It just is, right? It's like, of course, my body leans towards things that feel good. My system is designed to protect me. My system is designed to do that for me. So I don't want us to villainize the fact that our systems, as they are currently created, are doing something wrong or bad. Okay? First and foremost, let's get that clear. And I don't just think it's about us chasing dopamine, okay? We hear this very often with people that come in and tell me they have addictions, like I'm chasing dopamine at work, I'm chasing dopamine in my relationships, I'm in a narcissistic relationship because it's a dopamine addiction, right? The trauma bond. I'm a love addict, right? All of these words are just things people are hearing on social media and in these podcast interviews. And I want to really break down what it is you're saying about yourself so that you can be clear about your system. You can be clear about what your system is actually trying to do so that you can have more clarity to make better choices for yourself, okay? So when people say to me that they are chasing dopamine, what I hear them actually saying is, my body likes to feel good, like everybody's. My body has learned through associations and algorithms that if I do this thing, work, sex, relationships, shopping, whatever it is, right? I get a feeling state, or I get the promise of a feeling state, okay? In EMDR, we have 3 very popular addiction protocols. I don't love the word addiction, but what these protocols essentially all have in common is that they identify the thing we're doing, and then they identify the positive feeling state that is associated with or linked to this thing, okay? And how the brain has linked these things together, it can be linked through one time, right? I can have someone come in and say, I drink all the time because I have the promise of the positive feeling state of belonging, because when I was in high school and my parents' house was awful, I would go to the field behind the school with the football team and we would all drink beer and I felt like I belonged. And so every time I go to the bar, I feel a sense of belonging. I have a community, I have a home, okay? And this is how, for this particular client, this is how this association was stored. Okay, so this is not wrong or bad. This is just how the brain learned to get a positive feeling state from a behavior or a substance or an action or the promise of one. Because what happens is once our brains have linked these things together, The promise of dopamine, the promise of feeling good, the promise of a positive feeling state is there, but oftentimes cannot be achieved. And this is where people start to think about like compulsive behavior. This is the label people come in with, kind of self-identifying, like I feel out of control, I feel compulsive, I feel addicted because my brain has an algorithm. If I do this, I get to feel this. But what happens when I do this and do this and do this and do this and don't get to feel this positive feeling state? I'm going to keep on trying to get it. I'm going to drink more. I'm going to have more affairs. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to keep doing the thing because I want that feeling state. My brain knows it's associated, okay? So this isn't about dopamine. That's part of the conversation. What this is about is that we have a system that is designed to do two things, actually. It takes us toward what feels good for soothing, right? And it takes us away from things that don't feel good. We did a whole episode about anger and disgust and the function of disgust. Disgust literally pulls us back and away from things that are disgusting and not good for us. Maybe because a food or a substance smells bad, our noses shrivel up and we literally shut down in our faces. Our body pulls away, right? That's by design, okay? It's interesting when we hear, like I'll use a very popular example on social media right now, when we hear about love addiction, right? Elizabeth Gilbert just wrote this book everyone's talking about, where she talks about her love addiction. And what's a love addiction? Well, a love addiction is understanding an algorithm in your brain. If I have a relationship, it will give me this positive feeling state or the promise of the positive feeling state. So if I keep having relationships, if I keep trying to, maybe it's a sex addiction, maybe it's just physical, maybe it's emotional, but if I just keep trying to do this, I get the positive feeling state or the promise of one. And then what happens in that relationship when there's a problem or you realize that someone has a flaw or someone's an actual person, right, with their own stuff to figure out, and they're not always available to give you the promise of the positive feeling state. Right? You see this with people who have multiple divorces or, identify as a love addict or a sex addict. It's like they just keep hopping around and hopping around and hopping around because there is a association. Now, the association is not wrong or bad, okay? Here's where it gets to the level where it becomes a compulsion, or people, I'd say it feels out of control to me. And this is when our systems do not have a default mechanism inside of themselves to regulate and soothe ourselves without the thing, without the sex, without the relationship, without the alcohol, without the success at work. There is not yet a mechanism built inside as a default setting to soothe ourselves. And I say the word yet because we can build it, right? When we do EMDR and Brainspotting, when we have these addiction protocols, what they essentially do is they identify and articulate your brain has an algorithm, your brain has an association based on evidence, okay? It could be one time, it could be 50 times. If I have this thing, it gives me the positive feeling state that I want, and it might give me the promise of one. Okay. Guess what? Here's the good news. If your brain built that without you even consciously trying to make it, guess what else your brain can do, y'all? Your brain can make a new algorithm, a new association on purpose. Yeah, we can literally design a default mechanism that isn't relationship addiction, that isn't sex addiction, that isn't shopping addiction. All those things were not intentionally created. Think about it. It wasn't like you were, back to the example of drinking behind the school in the field, right? It wasn't like you consciously at 15 were like, oh, my house sucks. I don't feel like I belong in my family. Let me go drink alcohol with all these people from my school to feel like I belong. That wasn't articulated. A part of you articulated that, and a part of you put it in your memory network. And then guess what it did? It generalized, like all of the stuff inside of us, it generalized through time, through context, through relationships, right? This algorithm that was programmed at 15 years old, it doesn't care that you're now 55 years old. It does not care. Okay? So that was not intentionally coded, like a conscious decision. But guess what? We can consciously code. That is literally what EMDR and Brainspotting is. People come in my office and they say, I want to redesign this. I want to recalibrate this. Cool. What do you want it to look like instead? Because these addiction protocols that we use, they de-link the association. That's it. They de-link it. And then what happens? People realize what Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in her book. Oh my gosh, I've been using this relationship, job, substance, activity at a really intense frequency or rate or compulsion. And it's because I didn't have any default mechanisms built intentionally to soothe myself, to be with whatever comes up inside of me, right? I don't have to go drink a bottle of wine or have 5 relationships at once or be the VP of my company, chasing a positive feeling state or chasing soothing if I have already got in my safety system a default mechanism to soothe myself. And how do we build that? We talk about this in every episode, y'all. I'm going to talk about it again because it is so important. This is the belief inventory assessment. You can get it when you opt into the Zero Disturbance mailing list. It basically lets you map out the parts of you that have negative beliefs of self and positive beliefs of self. And here's what this does. This tells us how safe is your system? How self-led are you? How much ownership do you have of your own positive beliefs? Because let me tell you something, if you don't have the majority of these positive beliefs of self locked in for you, like they're not up for debate, right, with other people or systems, you are at risk. You are vulnerable of continuing to create more addictions, more compulsions, more relationships that don't go anywhere. These are facts, okay? So the real work when it comes to addiction or compulsion is not the content of the thing. It is, because addiction content, it's like whack-a-mole, right? You stop drinking, then you're chain smoking, right? You stop drinking and then you're eating everything. Why? Because your body is trying so hard to create a default system to soothe. Because your positive beliefs of self are not locked in. And because the negative beliefs of self are so distressed and so uncomfortable, wouldn't it feel better to get lost in a romance? Wouldn't it feel better to get lost in getting high all night or having a bottle of wine or like eating a tub of Ben and Jerry's? I mean, shit, I've done that. We've all done that, right? Again, not wrong or bad, but isn't it powerful to notice that you can intentionally create a default soothing system, okay? Where dopamine lives. back to dopamine, right? Dopamine is just how your system works, okay? I also want to say that, given the attention that's been in social media around narcissism and narcissistic abuse recovery, which I appreciate very much that there are people are talking about this, in addition to domestic violence, in addition to intimate partner violence, I love that people are getting conscious of this. But here's what I don't like. I don't like the idea that women are somehow responsible for being, quote, trauma bonded or having a dopamine rush with a narcissist. And here's why I don't like this conversation. Narcissists are very sophisticated and clever in some ways. In a lot of ways, they're idiots and miserable and they will self-destruct eventually. But what I'll say is that they will use the system of your body, which makes dopamine. They will use that system to abuse, manipulate, and exploit you. And it is not the fault of the victim that they have dopamine. It is not the fault of the victim that they have a system that leans towards a positive feeling state. It's not, right? It's like saying to somebody, well, I know you love oxygen, right? And you went out there to get that fresh air. So that's kind of on you. No, if someone in a relationship is pretending or love bombing or conning someone by wearing a mask about who that person wishes they were or what that person wants or what feels good to that person, that is a predator. Okay. And the predator has figured out, if I do this hooks somebody in and it feels good. And then I can get them attached to me to manipulate, abuse, devalue, discard, all the things narcissists do. Okay. It is not a dopamine rush. It is not a dopamine addiction in narcissism, in that relationship. Okay. It is a manipulation of someone's positive feeling state. It's a manipulation of someone's concept of reality that this person continues to be good and loving and kind and trustworthy. And then swoop, switch, mask falls down for a little bit, cheating, drinking, secrets, awful, abusive, withdrawn. Okay, this is just what we know about narcissists. This is just how they are, right? And eventually we see that it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not dopamine's fault. It's not the woman's fault, okay? The narcissist is a predator, and the narcissist is using a system in our bodies to abuse and control. And I talk about men in this example as narcissists, but obviously women can be narcissists as well, right? But it's less common. So we understand that predators exploit your system. It's not the system's fault that it wants dopamine, okay? And it's interesting, I want to just also zoom out. It's interesting to me how society blames women for getting involved in narcissistic relationships, but then also trains and programs women to get involved with a narcissist. Let me be more clear. Think about all the movies around romance, rom-coms, love stories. Think about all the Disney movies you saw growing up as a kid, right? Think about how we are trained through stories to connect to a narcissist. The love bombing in movies and fairy tales and stories is the norm, is the default, is the idealized romantic story. Do you ever think about that? Think about that. Think about the Disney movies where somebody was like in a tower and married somebody without meeting them. That's love bombing. If you met somebody who was like, I met this guy, he's amazing, we're going to get married in a couple of days or a couple months. Whoa, red flag, love bomb, right? You have to get to know someone. You have to have time to see the mask fall. Okay? But that's not what society trained us to think love was or is. And I want to name that because I'm really tired of women being victimized by narcissists because we have dopamine, because we have systems that want to lean towards what feels good. And simultaneously, we are being given stories and images and movies and media that tell us that that's what a real love story is. That's how you know. And I love the conversation around narcissistic abuse because it gives us a new story. It gives us a new checklist of what to look for instead of Cinderella, instead of Snow White, right? So when we talk about the function and purpose of dopamine, we understand more about it from these examples and these frameworks we've talked about today. And what I want to invite you to try is this. Instead of saying, I have a dopamine addiction, I have a dopamine attachment or dopamine rush, I want you to leave your chemicals and hormones out of it for a moment. And I want you to ask yourself, what is this thing I'm doing? What is it associated with? What is it algorithmically connected to in my system that gives me, what's the positive feeling state? Or the promise of the positive feeling state. And I want you to use your belief inventory assessment. You get it for free when you opt into our mailing list here at Zero Disturbance. I want you to ask yourself, what are the negative beliefs I carry with me that are so thirsty, that are so desperate to feel different? because it's not the relationship or the alcohol or the thing. It is the desperate parts of us, the unsoothed parts of us that are not yet clear about the fact that they are already good. They are already powerful, but there's confusion, there's clarity of previous experiences, of things that have been linked together. So these parts are desperately looking, compulsively looking for anything that makes them feel different. That makes so much sense, doesn't it? So you're not seeking dopamine. That's not the complete story. What you're actually seeking is a positive belief of self that has not yet fully been actualized yet. But here's the good news. It already belongs to you, okay? Because EMDR has a values framework we talk about on the podcast that you deserve every positive belief of self on here. You just do. And anything that has programmed you differently to think differently about yourself, to make these parts of us compulsive or addicted, that was just shitty programming. That was a shitty teacher. That was bad curriculum. Those experiences linked things in your brain that we can de-link and bring clarity to so that your positive beliefs of self are reclaimed and belong to you, so that you are no longer vulnerable to love addiction. You're no longer vulnerable to love bombing. You're no longer vulnerable to abuse, right? And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault those things are happening. I'm just giving you a framework for a safety system so that you have more protection and neutrality. Because guess what? There's always going to be predators. There's always going to be people who want to manipulate you and control you and get something from you. This is just the way the world is, okay? And how lovely is it that we as women can build our safety system, build our power system, our default nervous system by intentional design, which requires us and invites us to undo a lot of the programming that happened from media, from our parents, from our partners, that was unintentional, that was unconscious. Think about how strong that programming is and feels in your body. Can you imagine what it would be like if you reprogrammed it on purpose, using your dopamine for you? I'll tell you, it's pretty incredible. I hope today's conversation has been helpful. As always, I enjoy a thoughtful conversation in support of women, which supports everyone. And until the next time, y'all be well.